Okay, we're gonna call to order the October 19th meeting of the HRA Board. And first on our agenda is approval of the September meeting minutes.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Ryan, Gabler, any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Let the record show we are a quorum of 4. All right, then moving on to new business. We've been asked to split the cost of a wetland delineation for the One Roof project with the EDA at the Lutzen Four Directions location. Jason, you want to tell us some more about that?
Sure. The board knows that I've been working with One Roof on a potential second phase at their Four Directions dwelling site. We're looking both at that and that's later in the agenda. But I guess I'll tell you now, both at that and at the Grand Marais location where they have the Nordic Star land trust homes.
Mhm.
So initially we looked at doing one of them, but as we've continued to talk and work together, we thought, well, let's go down both paths and see what happens. Because we need both of them. So what we learned last week, actually, they had been talking with the EDA, have been in communication with the EDA. In fact, they were here yesterday for an EDA meeting. Mary and I were at that yesterday to request some changes to the covenants around their first project. All of that's to say that the property where their Four Directions sits is actually one larger parcel, and the other half of that parcel is where we're looking to do a second phase. And that needs to have a wetland delineation done in order to understand where and how much they can build. But they, in their conversation with the EDA, working out some of these other covenant questions, they let the EDA know they had basically about a 24-hour window to agree with MSA, which is an engineering firm out of Duluth, and they've been doing a lot of work with them, to hire MSA to do the wetland delineation. Or they'd have to wait till the spring because of their business. They would not be able to accommodate. So the EDA said, well, yeah, I guess let's go ahead and just do it. And then I met with some of the board members of the EDA, and we discussed, and we thought it would be appropriate if the HRA splits the cost of that. So it's $4,000 is the total cost of the wetland delineation. They've already done it. The MSA did. This was last week. And I, according to our procedures we put in place and the board approved in May, I have a $2,000 spending limit. So I don't need to, I'm not seeking board approval, but I also want to bring the board along. This is a larger expense that we haven't had yet. So I wanted to make you aware that this was a request, and we all thought it was appropriate for the EDA and HRA to split this cost. So I just want to make sure there are any questions or concerns about doing so, and let you know this is what's going on.
Great. Carpe diem.
Yeah.
You got one day, you better see it.
Yeah, literally, this is the day. Yeah. Any questions about that at all from folks?
What's their rough? So help me understand assuming that the wetland shows a buildable piece of that part of the lot. What's their time frame for, or what are the next steps for them to make a decision on an expansion of the housing?
I am meeting with One Roof. Well, we have now a biweekly standing meeting, and I met with the resort owners, the larger resort owners, several of them anyway, to kind of reaffirm or confirm their need for housing and what that looks like in that particular area. And so since I've been doing that iteratively, and then now reconnect with One Roof this week about that. So the short answer, I'm trying to make it short, is that what's needed is to finalize or fine tune scale and typology.
Yeah.
So if it's going to be a replication, or I should say duplication maybe of the Four Directions project, or is it going to be a different type of construction? We're exploring those. Yeah. We were looking at modular, but the costs we're getting are not competitive where we think they should be. So we're still trying to figure that out. Suffice to say, first thing is to figure out where on the site, and then there will be some constraints with wetlands and with bedrock, and we have to decide. And once we understand that particularly, we can say, oh, we can fit 20 units or 10, or right. Okay. So that's the next step. But I'm fairly certain if the project we're looking at is going to be consisting of studio and 2-bedroom apartments, and the question is between 12 and 20 units, give or take.
Great. Will that ground be broken in the spring then?
We're hopeful, sure. The site's a little There's a lot going, I don't know why, it's never easy. There's a lot going on with that site, and that there's, of course, bedrock wetlands. And then there's also, MnDOT, as a result of the Four Directions project, requires a turn lane to be established into that site, which incurs another cost. And so we're working with MnDOT to figure out how much that's going to be. And of course, they would drive some of that timeline as well. But the idea is to queue everything up over this winter so that we can hit ground running in April, May.
The turn lane, is that part of the development cost?
Yep, it's a result of so they were okay with having the 16 units without a designated turn lane, but now we're kind of putting it over the edge
Right.
where they're going to require a specific turn lane.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So that's in part, that's the reason. And on top of that, like I mentioned before, the property is one larger parcel, and in hindsight should have been separated, subdivided into two discrete sites. Lessons learned, it was OneRoof's first multifamily project they're going to own. So having said that, we have to talk with all the agencies, so the EDA, IRRR, and DEED, to agree to remove the covenants from that second piece of property, because it's very difficult to go into a new development with existing preconditions for funding purposes. And so that's all going to be worked on. The likelihood is that because of all those moving parts, this may be a 23 finish planning fall start. And that's in part why we're looking at the Grand Marais site, to get a start on that in the spring if we can, if this is going to take a little longer. Experience has just been that when you get all these parties involved with this type of thing, it just takes the process is longer.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Anything else? Okay.
Thanks, Jason.
Welcome.
Next is the financial update, and you have that in your packet. The page after the September minutes is a expense update that Jason provided. Looks pretty standard.
Yes, nothing to write home about, Chair. I just wanted to provide it in the packet.
Yeah.
One thing is, as of today, so I didn't add it because it happened about 2 hours ago. I just received, actually, when you came in the office, I received that title commitment from North Shore Title for the city property that we'll talk about later.
Okay.
So I got an invoice for that. That's $425 for the title commitment.
For a nurse title.
Yes. And I suppose I'll provide this update now. I think folks know that we had a generous citizen decide to pay for the survey. I don't know if it was aware of that. So we're very grateful. It was Mr. Sanders, and he dropped off the checks to cover it. And so we're wrapping up the Alta. I just submitted the title commitment to the survey company to get the Alta, and then that will be concluded. I'm hoping by the end of the month. The survey folks are out until the 25th, so we'll see. But nevertheless, I think it reaffirms, I suppose, makes sense for us to contribute to the One Roof project in light of us having a generous, someone else covering this cost for us. It seems appropriate. Any questions about the?
Yeah, I've got two.
Sure.
The one, the county admin for finances, 667. What is that?
Oh, we pay the county to act as our auditor or our accountant.
Sure. All right. And is that an annual or a month?
Correct. Yeah, it's annual. So
Annual.
Yep.
Okay. And then the AT&T wireless at 590.87. And it says reoccurring monthly. Is that the balance between June and December?
correct. Yeah, it's about 84.90 something a month.
I assume that, but I just want to.
Yeah, as opposed to just putting it on there every time. I
Sure.
just put a block on
Yeah,
there for it.
that makes sense.
And we have also one other thing that needs to be updated. Well, maybe I already have it on here. We pay for the space, of course, at the office, and we have just paid for ease of, for the auditor's sake and for the EDA's sake, we paid for the rest of the year for the office space instead of cutting checks every month. Any other questions? Nothing dramatically has changed. This has been pretty consistent.
Okay.
Speaking of the
Mhm.
I'm wondering if it is probably not the most essential thing, but have you guys had any time to talk about putting signage out front?
Yes, we have, Chair. We have, the landowner, Jeremy, is actually going to be fixing his sign. I think it's not this week, it's next week. He's going to be making some changes to the lighting.
Okay.
So we're kind of waiting for the actual structure sign piece to be done. And then Beth Dross and I have we have our assigned slat, so to speak.
Yeah.
So we're waiting for that to be done and then we'll go get it printed.
Okay. Very good. It's not like Murray is a big city and people can get lost easily looking for it.
In my experience, if I say it was the old pharmacy or DMV,
Yeah.
they say, I know exactly where that is.
Exactly. Very good. Okay, then moving right along to other business, the director's report. And starting with the school district property.
Yes, I just want to update the board. I met with the school district board on the 6th. Thank you. Goodness, I can't. Thank you for keeping it straight. I can't. Early October.
It's easier for me.
It was, I think, a productive meeting. In fact, on the way in here, I just got off the phone with Chris, the school superintendent. So the short version is they are open to the conversation about they own 27 acres on the north side of Gunflint Trail. And I walked through the presentation with them, and then at the end proposed that we partner and use that property for housing as it's currently zoned. And so there was a lot of conversation about mechanics of that and what the school board would need out of that such an arrangement, whether it's some monetary compensation or some one of the alternatives I proposed is right of first refusal. If they want a couple of lots that are developed, they can do that for. So we're working on mechanics. Suffice it to say, the superintendent just indicated that he and I are going to work together, and he's going to bring a resolution to the school board to authorize him to negotiate with us and figure out what we might be able to do.
And how is it currently zoned in terms of lot size?
It's in R1 zoning, so it's reasonable density, I should say. I don't remember what the square footage per lot is off the top of my head. But
It's in the city limits.
Yep.
So it's got septic or sewer connection.
That's one of the really appealing parts of the site.
Yes.
Wetlands are going to be a consideration there as well. And I think folks knew that Anna Hamilton had worked on it in the past and ran into some wetlands challenges.
Mhm.
So you think that's, so there's no, do you foresee the need for us to advocate for more dense lot zoning, or do you think that R1 is sufficient, what we need?
It depends. That's a great question, Commissioner. What I'm currently contemplating is a mix, and there are opportunities to do PUDs if we need to, a planned unit, plan urban development. So we could essentially make it denser. So, and in fact, the city's zoning ordinance allows for things like ADUs and greater density as it is. They've already made some significant changes. So I'm not as concerned. When we get out of city limits, that becomes more complicated. Okay. But so far, I think that it will work just fine. Yeah. Any other questions about that property?
Just a thought that in terms of what I see as one of the major housing needs in the county is for people who have actual job possibilities here and can't find housing. And that includes teachers, because I've heard school board members talk about that. So maybe the thought of a small portion of it, or in some ownership or rental form, specifically for teachers, maybe rental would be better for them. They could at least get acquainted into the community. But I'm just thoughts that's my biggest focus on our housing needs right now is, people who want to work for the county or the school board or the Forest Service or the DNR and the hospital have jobs with salaries and benefits and can't find housing. I don't think there's a higher priority for me personally than seeing if we can't meet those needs really. But anyway,
great.
Is that part of the conversation with the school board about their own staff housing needs?
Indeed, I pointed to that pretty directly in the conversation we had in the presentation, helping them understand why this is relevant to the school board. And it didn't take long for them to, I asked them, do you know of paraprofessionals or school aides or teachers or, maintenance folks that need, and they said, yes, of course, they've had a couple of people. And Chris was able to speak to 2 people recently who in the last year who had left in part for that reason. So I don't think that's lost on them, which is they seemed to think the idea of having a pad ready, so to speak, site that they maybe get a premium price or reduced, I should say, price for as part of the trade-off is a really appealing concept for them. Having said that, that's one of the reasons that I'm really focusing on the multifamily piece down the road for the city property. Because that will be faster and it will be more units. So the single family is it's just a different animal, so to speak.
Mhm.
So I'm hopeful that the apartment project, if we can move it forward, will provide an immediate landing space to what Commissioner Gabler is talking about. And then this will be an ownership opportunity for folks to transition into or buy right away. Throw all at the wall and see what sticks.
Mhm.
Any other questions about the school district property update? Okay. Chair, do you mind if I skip down to the next one
You
here?
go right ahead.
All right, just want to let you know quickly, I went, like I had communicated to the board, went down to Minneapolis, had some great meetings a couple weeks ago now. Wow. With 4 different modular companies and an engineering firm. The short version of what I learned is
Bad news.
yeah, not entirely encouraging. They are, like everyone else, experiencing the same labor shortage challenges. They have a little bit better price control and, of course, timing control. So again, if I can cliff notes it, the presumption that modular is going to be less expensive than stick built, I'm kind of throwing that aside because that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. It used to be the case.
Why not?
Yeah.
Because the materials, material cost, the demand, those are all impacting them as well. And the shipping cost, that's one of the bigger challenges. They have to figure out, well, gas price is one thing, and then availability of drivers to bring it here. And in the closest place we would get it from is probably Detroit Lakes. Dynamic Homes builds there. I think that's the closest manufacturer. So when you compile all those things together, there can be a marginal savings, but it's not necessarily the case.
Are any of the modular manufacturing companies using computer layouts like the truss companies do?
Computer layouts, like computer designed layouts?
Yeah, well, and then the cutting tables and all, I mean.
Oh, yes,
The
yep.
manufacturing of trusses is very computerized these days.
Yeah, there's some.
Are the modular
Absolutely.
doing the same?
Yeah, they're doing some really interesting things. And they've got it. So one of the companies, Rise Modular, they're out of Owatonna, Minnesota. So the next time I'm home, it's not home anymore. But when I go back to visit my folks, for example, they said, come take a tour, let our plant manager know, and we'll show you around. Which I'm going to do over Thanksgiving or Christmas or something. Point being that they have a really sophisticated system in place for design and for, think of a maximally efficient assembly line. So they are saving on those costs, but they're also paying, their workers well. And again, they have larger overhead because they have a factory building they have to build it in, as opposed to the small garage shop to store tools. So what I learned from them, and Rise actually doesn't even do single family; they only do multifamily modular now, and they only do, as they put it, they aim to do 80 units or greater. So that's just the scope of what they're working on now. That shows the demand in that space, how much that's grown, which is part of the reason their costs have gone up. But the reason that it's so compelling is because we can outsource the labor to somewhere else. So if the costs are break even, we can still you take advantage of their labor pool and their predictability of schedule. That's a huge advantage.
Scheduling is huge,
Yeah.
really. They can, they'll give you a date, and the unit will be there on that date.
Yeah.
Whereas here, doing the stick built.
Hopefully they show up.
Yeah, right. You've got to get in the ground and closed in before winter, and then you got to find the workers, and that's the one benefit. It's sad that you'd think they'd be a little more cost effective, but I can see in this environment, I don't know what
Nothing
is.
is cost
nothing is.
effective.
Yeah.
They can tell you also that shipping in those modular components can also bring complexity in the simple logistics of getting here from Detroit Lakes.
Yeah.
When you have to have 3 days of good weather with no wind and no rain. And
Because they're on the back of the truck.
drivers that are willing to go at least for a little while on a gravel road. Because the bridges are in the way and you have to go around them at Taconite Harbor.
Right.
It's very interesting. I believe in it. I'm not saying it's not the right thing to do. I'm just saying. Ask Julie Petrucia about shipping.
She told me all about it.
Did she?
Yes, she did.
Okay. I thought she might have.
Yeah, she did.
So it, you know, it can be done, and we learned a lot in the first project, so it's a good foundation that we're building.
I still believe in it conceptually, and they're getting creative with, like, even SIPs are considered modular.
Mm.
And so one of the buildings I walked through was a SIPs constructed building. Which, I mean, it has tremendous R40 walls and R60 roof insulation. So that's compelling to me. It's just a matter of getting I'm working on a pilot for that small house that I've been talking about with a SIPs product, but figuring out the staging of who puts it together, who does the pad, who does the electrical and plumbing. And it's basically you're acting as a sort of GC for the project. So it just gets a little more complicated than a modular full volumetric set it on the slab.
Yeah. Have you found any of those SIPs connections, people who have worked here in the county before? Because people mentioned to me, like, you gotta talk to this guy because he's been here before and he's a good
Like,
as a SIPs provider.
oh, I'm not sure. I might
I'm
have.
gonna try to make
Yeah, if you
myself a note.
dig up who that is, I'm happy to. If I haven't met with them, I'm
Okay.
happy to.
There's two very expensive homes up on the Gunflint that were put in with SIPs foundations, and they rotted.
Yeah,
The builder, I mean, they're not.
I've heard of those.
Grade, and they did it anyway, and then that builder's gone now out of the state, and both these places have to be redone on the foundations. That nice little place down by the harbor, by the boat launch and stuff, that was all SIPs.
Yeah, the new one.
Pretty little place.
Yeah, it's a nice little spot. Yeah, so the one I'm looking at is not a SIPs foundation. It's a concrete slab.
Good.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. We don't want to do SIPs.
No, but the SIPs panel for the wall system and the roof is efficient and it's like half modular.
Our house is SIPs up in the old ski road.
Oh.
That was a Steve Sandy, I think, was the builder back
Okay.
in like 2005.
That could be one of the names that I've heard.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
I wonder if Steve's still around.
do some checking.
So that's the short debrief. It was definitely worth the trip. I'm still in conversation with Rise and trying to figure out if there are multiple projects potentially at the same time. And if we can coordinate, maybe there's a way to have them come up and do them all, boom, boom, boom.
Could there be some joint projects with other people in Northeast Minnesota? You know, with them, I mean, if they've got a minimum production, level of 80 or whatever, finding a couple other HRAs or developers in Duluth or somewhere else up in this area to partner with, or would they be willing to just cut us into one piece of 80?
I asked him about that conceptually. I asked him about that because I was trying to figure out how small can we get a small piece of that pie, and then we did.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
The 80 is what they want to build in a year?
No.
That's the
Per
size
project.
of project they want to
Correct.
do?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't understand that.
Yeah, they go by modules. So it's about 80 units or 100 modules, because you can imagine there's sections that are just hallways, for example, in a main, in a multifamily building. The short answer is no. And there are two reasons. One is because unless the projects are the same every time, then they have to go back and do the redesign. And so that's the time and money. And unless they're really close, it doesn't really save them on mobilization costs, because they still have to send their crews with trailers and with the boom lifts and everything, the cranes to do all the work at each site. But I appreciate the line of thing, because I was doing the same thing, and it doesn't really work for them.
Is do these companies have their own development arm, or who would be the customer? Let's say in an 80 unit, let's say we had an 80 unit multifamily that we're going to put in. I know it's bigger than we're planning, but just for hypothetical purposes, how would the deal be structured? Would they be a vendor supplying to us, or who would be the customer?
The customer would be the developer we partner with to build it.
Okay.
So the HRA's role would be making that partnership connection. So, for example, there are a couple of developers I'm working with on that other potential on this other site, and if they're not the GC, then they probably don't particularly care the construction methodology. Okay. They want to. It's about packaging and bringing the equity and the financing to the table. So they'd be open to using Rise, I suspect. Yeah, I don't think the HRA is not a position fiscally to be the the.
No, I didn't think so. I just wanted to make sure I understood what the.
Sure, yep.
Do they do, what's the limits on their number of stories that they build height wise?
I don't know that they have, well, I know that there are stick built, so there's building code limits. I don't know, you know.
Do they have engineering limits, I guess is what I'm asking. If
I'm
they're
not
doing
sure.
80 units.
They usually do from the projects that they give me a nice, you know, overview of their projects, and they're some of them you would never guess they're modular. They're very sharp. One's in St. Paul and Seven Corners, if you know where that is, and it's like an angled parcel, and they did it 0 lot lines, so it looks you would never guess. But it's I think their bailiwick is 3 or 4 story stick built, and then they can do that over a concrete podium. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, depending on the project. But one of the things that I learned that was really helpful, that's frustrating, but helpful to know, is that I've been talking with some other colleagues in Duluth, some equity investors, talking about, well, why isn't there a company that's doing modular that's just building the same thing over and over again? And like, then you streamline it, you can reduce all the costs you design at once. And as long as it meets IBC, and you can go a little above and beyond to be safe, why would you not do that? And I ask these modular companies that question, like, why is there a way to design a one like size fits all sort of affordable project, more affordable project that, you know, you could get, you know, a bunch of HRAs across wherever to sign on for, or HRAs or nonprofit developers like One Roof. And they said the problem, they thought that, and they started going down that track. And what they found is that every site is different, and that everybody wants something a little different from their project. And so they just ended up customizing all of those, and there was no cost savings. So I haven't given up on that dream, but right now it's not happening very much. So
what about a dream of having one of these modular manufacturers locate in Duluth as an example? I mean, yeah, I'm thinking both for the city of Duluth, obviously their needs and surrounding neighborhoods, and then the rest of us here in the beautiful North Shore of Lake Superior.
in my free time, I'm prodding that.
Okay.
The couple of equity folks, and actually I'm meeting with a company on Friday, a buddy of mine who started a modular company in Duluth.
Oh,
And he and his architect who I worked with in the past are coming up to getting a little tour of Cook County quick. They don't have the capacity right now, like everybody else, but I want to get on their radar for 2 years from now. And if they get some seed money that they're seeking, then one of the big issues is scaling up that sort of operation. Even if you have to get the labor, so they're stealing it from somebody else locally to do it. But I'm encouraging them steal.
that's great.
It's. I'm glad you mentioned, because somebody actually asked about that recently. And can't we do it up here? And the short answer is no, we don't have the capacity up here to do something like that. So I'm gonna ask.
However, I would like to add another thought to your work on that. If you bring that to the housing summit that's coming up on the Iron Range, IRRB has a lot of creative financial incentives to bring manufacturing to the Iron Range. And with First Highway 11 coming across, we could certainly benefit from a modular building business on the Iron Range instead of in Duluth.
Some of the folks that I'm talking with just met with IRRR yesterday or the day before.
Sweet.
So yes, I agree. That could be a good resource.
They have both, they have grants and loans, and they do creative packaging for job creating business development. So
yeah, and they have a new OSB plant going up near Cohasset.
oh, yep.
So
Yeah.
there might be some natural matchmaking.
Who's they? What company?
The range. I don't remember the name of the OSB company, but they're building a
I
new
don't know if I
factory
can
just
pull
north of
that out, but
Cohasset.
I remember reading about it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
What is OSB?
it's basically a pressed chipboard product.
Oriented strand board.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, all the sheeting that goes on.
Wooden glue put together.
It's either a plywood or OSB. And all the SIPs panels are OSB.
Mhm.
SIPs are sandwiched.
Sandwiched, yeah. It's just cheaper than plywood usually.
Yeah.
So they're building that there. So there are some things in the back. I mean, that conversation that I'm kind of just engaging and entertaining is like a 5-year plus conversation,
Good.
but
That's good.
it's at least getting the
Yeah. Good
ball
for you.
rolling. It's a problem the whole northern Minnesota has to deal with.
And beyond,
Oh, absolutely. And I'd rather have it built here.
but we're focused on our, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But that is great potential. The IRRB is really focused on working towards housing solutions for the Iron Range, and their focus right now is on the cities and
Mhm.
towns of the core of the Iron Range, but we will definitely benefit from anything that they do there. Because we are in the service area, so we'll be eligible for.
Are they seeing the same trends in terms of unaffordable housing for the need for entry level housing?
Their market's a little, yes, their market's a little different.
But it's a little bit, yeah.
They have a
it's
lot more stock of, I would say, distressed or existing housing stock
Mhm.
that is, you can't find that here. Like
Yeah.
it's analogous to West Duluth. You can still get a house for $160,000.
Yeah.
That doesn't exist here.
Okay.
So
Right, but
Silver Bay is like that, because it was a lot of, during the peak of the Iron Range activities, they had a lot of worker housing, or small houses.
Mhm.
And then when they became more automated and less mining, then there just weren't those number of workers, so a lot of those places are sitting either empty or derelict or rentals, or Silver Bay has a fair number of those also, but that's as close as they get to us here.
I'm gonna comment on Silver Bay in a minute. Actually, it's on one of the updates here that I'll get to in a second. Well, I'll just skip to it now. Actually, it's fine. What's interesting, agreed. And historically, you could get, in the last 10 years, you could get a house in Silver Bay for under $100,000 easy. You cannot do that anymore. And in part, so in my conversations with the resort, so that I met with the Ski Hill owners and Bluefin owners and then Odyssey owners to talk about the need to corroborate with One Roof and our schemes. What I found is that several of those companies were buying houses in Silver Bay. And I think actually 8 of them they bought a total of 8 houses, single family homes, to have employees live in, and then they shuttle them here.
Okay.
So the reason I bring it up is because I've been watching the Silver Bay market because it's interesting. And there's a lot of talk about, there's a development proposed down there. I think this summer, somebody announced that there was a plan to do 20 something else. Anyway, point being, the real estate has now appreciated because there's a sort of an artificially induced demand from outside the market, because it was one of the few places in the North Shore you can still get a house for that price, that had utilities, public utilities and et cetera. Why I bring it up and why it's still relevant now is when we're looking at the One Roof property in Lutzen, or that potential phase 2, the first phase, I think, had a maximum of 25% being used for seasonal workers or something like that. What I'm trying to wrap my head around is, and I'm leaning toward, I don't think it makes sense to do as restrictive this time, because I know there's a sort of general response to, like, well, we don't want to provide the resorts housing. Totally get that. At the same time, if they're going to be buying single family homes throughout the area, I would rather have their seasonal employees in an apartment type product and make those homes available for other folks. And what I've heard from the resorts is, well, yeah, if there was something else that was closer to the ski hill that was in the price range of our employees, we would absolutely rather rent that.
Sure.
So I'm just putting that on your radar now, because I know there's been in the past was a lot of hesitancy and sort of knee-jerk, not in a negative way, but a sort of not a revulsion, that's too strong, hesitancy and dislike of that conceptually.
But to the extent they've got skin in the game, and I mean financial skin in the game, I think that's very appropriate, and we ought to be partnering with them. But I understand.
Say more about
the
that,
issue
Bill, partnering with the ski slopes and partnering with.
with the resorts,
Uh-huh.
because they're guaranteeing some of the rent in the One Roof.
75% of them.
Yeah.
Well, so if you bring public money to the project, you have to make all the units available on the public market equally across the board to everyone initially. Then after that, if they're not rented up, then you can go to some of the others and say, okay, now you can have however many of these you want, but you can't start with. We
Can't start
Mm-hmm.
with a quota or something.
We started with one business that guaranteed, so in the Lutzen projects there, in Lutzen, 4 Directions, there's 16 apartments. And one business guaranteed rent for 6 apartments for the first year. So that was great for One Roof to know that then they only had to find 10 other renters. And everything full up rented, and they were able to start right away the cash flow that was needed to pay the debt service, right?
Sure.
But as each apartment becomes empty, then you have to advertise it on the open market.
Mhm.
You can't just go to a resort and say, okay, we have one for you. We, in the existing covenants.
Mhm.
It's if the next piece of property is separated from those covenants and other covenants are created, then of course we have the opportunity to have a different conversation, but still with public money, fair housing law says you can't discriminate for any reason. You have to make it available to anyone.
Is it possible, Mary, that say there was on a project, there was 75% public money and 25% the ski resorts put up? So if it was a mix of private money and public money, then could that be divided out by units? Can't
If you
be,
have $1 of public money,
it's
you
all,
have to use
Okay.
the same laws.
Good enough.
And what I'm suggesting isn't that, so to your point, Bill, if they want to put skin in the game, as you put it, if they want to put financially some sort of investment in the project, that can be definitely contemplated, and then we figure out what that needs to look like. But let's pretend that they don't for a moment. What I'm trying to, I've been very clear with OneRoof and with these companies about this. What I'm trying to ensure gets built is going to be more versatile and flexible than, like, for example, I told them the HRA has no interest in building lodge-style dormitory housing. We want to build something that, sure, your employees could live in, or sure, XYZ professional could live in. It doesn't matter.
They have their own dormitory style.
Yeah, exactly.
living, and that's, so that's
If
appropriate.
they want to build that, that's
Yeah,
totally fine.
but they've got some of it now.
But what we was more concerned about is making sure that there was enough demand from local employers for how much housing, like that was the
Sure.
question. So I know that OneRoof is actually today or tomorrow meeting with one of the resorts again to talk about potential involvement. But from my perspective, I just am trying to raise the point that maybe we don't be as prescriptive about seasonal versus non-seasonal, because that's the nature of that area. Or maybe we're half as restrictive or something. Just putting that as food for thought, because if the ultimate result is that these companies are buying single-family homes, then whether we like that or not, we still want to figure out a way to mitigate that or reduce that from happening.
Especially when you're buying them in
Silver, yeah,
So we want those families in Cook County,
where they can spend
We want
their
those
extra
kids in our
income, and-
school.
right?
right?
so let me ask this, several times this conversation, I've heard that there was some question about whether or not the units were gonna get filled up. And that sort of guaranteed rent and units gonna get filled up. With the housing study that was done, why would there be any doubt that if you built rental units that they would not fill up?
Two reasons. That's a really great question, actually. And I'm a case study for it because my house is currently listed and I've had 0 offers. And I'm not,
it's affordable.
yeah, well, comparatively to everything else in the county, yeah. And it's new. But the point I'm trying to make is that there are very distinct tranches of housing here. And I'm finding this out. It's been confirmed the hard way for my wife and I, that if you want to, if what people can afford and the housing needs, they're not always in the same level. So
I'm talking about rental units.
Yep. So sorry,
Okay.
I'll get to that right now.
Right.
So in the case of the Lutzen project we're talking about, I have been asking, along with the general demand from their employees, I'm asking price points. Like I'm telling them, based on our projections now, the rents would be around this and this for studio and 2. Is that commensurate with what you think you'd be charging them now, or like what does that look like? So I'm doing that gut check because if they say that's way out of the range of what they would pay for, then we can't build it.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
I understand.
So the demand is there. It's just a function of how low can we get the rents where we can still make the project above water.
Mhm.
And so far they've said, yeah, that seems, if we can get 2 people in the 2 bedrooms, like, 2 employees and then the single studio, we think that can make sense.
Okay. Yeah. that
And
makes-
it's the difference between demand and market.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, what
Yep.
are you willing to pay or what can you afford to pay? You want a home, oh yeah, I want a single family home.
Sure.
And what's your price point? Well, $100,000.
Exactly.
I mean, honestly, and I'm not making light of it at all, but and right now the real estate market's kind of going through a transition of,
Yep.
3% mortgage loans to 5% and going up from there. That's pretty clear. And so all of a sudden, an enthusiasm for buying a home has cooled off quite a bit. I know that's the case in the cities. I'm
Yep.
sure it's the case here as well.
Yep.
And because I'm seeing more for sale signs than I have for a couple of years around here.
People were trying to, myself included, I mean,
Yeah.
timing for me didn't work out really well. It's fine. If we stay there, we're fine. But my point is, the people knew the rates were going up.
Yeah,
And I think we're seeing more people list their properties now because they're like, oh, shoot, before they continue to go up, if I want to capture the equity that I've, that's been appreciating the last 10 years or whatever, now is the time. But I think this morning rates were at 7.2. So they're literally double what they were earlier this year. And that's $700+ of interest increase. I mean, that's just, it's huge.
Yeah.
So I think, so one of the things, and this is why this work is so different, and you're right, I think we are in a transitory or transitionary period, and we don't know where it's going to land, but one of the things that's complicating our work even more is what we can build. We know there's demand for the units, but like you're saying, Bill, is the demand that doesn't equal the market and what they're willing or able to pay. And we can't build something that's not going to be absorbed.
no, wouldn't be fair to the developers or to us if we've got to do some stepping up either. So yeah, that's why we're paying you the big bucks. Be on top of this stuff.
Oh,
But
I'm
honestly, it is
certainly
an
trying.
interesting time. I think a lot of people have thought they have a lot of equity in their house because they saw, an appraisal. Oh, my house is worth 500,000.
Right.
Maybe that's only worth 400 right now, or
Mhm.
I don't know the numbers exactly, but I think that that kind of shakeout's starting to go on, and will continue for a while.
Agreed.
Hopefully things get back on track. The good news is anybody who wants a job can get one in this country, and that's the fact of life is that employment opportunities are still there. And I don't think companies are firing people or letting them go right now just because interest rates are going up and the costs are going up a bit, because they may not be able to get that same quality employee back, and especially if they're in skilled positions. So
And the converse, the bad news is that the jobs that they can get won't afford a new house.
yeah, no, that's right.
That's anyway.
So kind
So
of
much.
walked off of the agenda. I'm gonna bring us back.
Yes.
Commissioner
That's what-
Sullivan, we are at number Roman numeral 3 under the director's report. The city of Grand Marais property is next.
Yes. Welcome.
And that's why we're paying Mary.
And
the
we're
big
not-
bucks.
That's right, to keep us on track here.
Yeah.
Well, this meeting is not on there was a hiccup in the technology, so
Yeah,
we're recording on the laptop. So if you want to come over closer, so
If
that
If you don't mind, please.
Jason's microphone or the laptop microphone can take up your. Thank you.
And we maybe feel more able to digress because we're not being recorded live per se, but okay, I'll keep us moving along. Thank
I love
you.
hanging out and having all these conversations with you
Yes.
guys, but I want to keep us somewhat on track.
Fair enough. Thank you, Chair. The quick property update from City of Grand Marais is, I mentioned earlier, I got the title commitment back today from North Shore Title. So just a quick recap, we ordered the appraisal, or excuse me, the survey. That wrapped up last week. And then as soon as I got that back, and I believe it's in your packet, the result of the survey is,
It's the last 2 pages in the packet. Yeah.
yes, I do not expect one for you to be able to translate that, or two to care. But I thought it'd be interesting to point out, this is, for those of you who've seen surveys before, this is a very interesting and complicated survey.
yeah.
For a variety of reasons, but the biggest reason is it's half of it's Torrens and half of it's abstract. And so they can't, it'd be much simpler if they could convert them to one or the other. And you can, but that's a very tedious and expensive and dumb process. That can be so we didn't do that. Where the title company accepted this, and then I got the title commitment today, which shows a series of easements, historic easements for the right of way and for construction and so on. That is now in the hands again of the surveyor, who's going to map all of those things on an exhibit, so that in probably it's going to be November. It will be November, mid-November, so that I can bring that to City Council and show them this is the property. Here are all the encumbrances and easements that exist. Please say yes to conveying it to the HRA.
Mhm.
That's the final step.
How many, are these, my property in St. Paul was the same way. It was a house set and right down the middle of the house, Torrance and abstract. Don't ask me why, but anyway, so are these considered two separate parcels then?
Well, yeah, as they're described right now, they're two, if you look at the map, like you can go to the county website,
Yeah.
there's like a weird line bifurcating the property. What this is doing is containing those two lines into one legal description.
So how, I didn't see any acreage. How many acres?
It's approximately 12.
Total.
Yep. The road on the top cuts part of it off, and that's okay. We wouldn't. So the multifamily project is probably going to take between 4 and 4.5. So I would suspect there will be, a good deal left on the northerly side, and then it remains to be seen what to do with that. Again, we talked just a minute ago about the school district property. In my opinion, that is a better suited piece of property for single family development.
Yeah.
So I would like to focus on doing that there. And then we can, if the city, for example, wants that other part of the property, the northerly part of the property back, fine. Maybe we do another smaller scale. If the multifamily goes really well, it gets absorbed. Maybe there's another one that's right behind it on a smaller scale. Either way, they'll have, over 6 acres, give or take, left that's going to be vacant. And maybe that's just green space as a buffer for the apartments.
Yeah.
Totally fine. I mentioned that because originally I had shown maybe a scheme of having some single family up there. But then as I went out there, walked the site, et cetera, I thought, maybe the other site's better.
In terms of price, are we talking $1 and other valuable consideration, or is there actual real money?
From the city?
Expecting, yeah, from the city?
Interestingly, when I proposed this to them in the summer, they said, yeah, we should give that to them. And I interpreted that as for $1 another valuable consideration. Yeah. They didn't name any price. They didn't say there was any issue. It was wonderful of them. And that's the operating assumption, because since then, and I have been in conversation with Mike Roth about it. The price has never come up. It's never been anything but that assumption.
Okay, well,
I'll be very surprised if I get there and they say, so where's that 150 grand? I was, oh, geez.
I don't think the city wants us to go and ask the county for the money to buy the land from the city. I think it's a very clean conveyance of the property.
It's
did they
very
ever-
appropriate.
Did they ever close their HRA up officially?
Yeah.
At one
Yes.
point, I know that was being talked about. but-
They did.
Yeah, I made sure that they did because I didn't want to be illegal.
Yeah.
So
No.
we officially are sanctioned to do HRA business in the city limits. Yes, so that's that property. Any questions about that, where we're at in that process? I think one of the second to last thing I have here is,
We have one with collaboration.
oh, yeah, I'm gonna skip down to V quick just on while we're talking about the city.
Oh,
I am meeting with them, or I'm presenting at the city council on the 26th. I think it's the meeting, next week. To discuss two things. One, this property, to let them know where we're at in the process, and then to just remind them, hey, remember that time you said you'd give that to us? We're almost there. And then secondly, it's to give them a presentation like I did to the county board about tax increment financing and tax abatement financing, and help them understand the nuances of that. Because as I've told the board before, that's going to be coming up with any multifamily project here. So I want to make sure that they're aware of how it works.
can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
You might reschedule this for after the election in November, because there's going to be, for sure, 2 new city council members that won't hear this on October 26th.
Huh. That's the date Mike proposed, but that's a good point.
I think you might want to ask him to postpone it until after and I don't, do they take their seats immediately?
No, they don't take their seats till January.
December, January?
Well, let's
I
at least
would
get the
say-
sale done by then.
Well, I think we don't have to hold the sale, but any educational about TIF and all
Well, it
that.
still might be good to educate, because there are people that watch
People
those
watch,
meetings.
yeah.
Mhm.
And you can always do it again,
You know,
or have a meeting for
Yeah.
new commissioners.
And they're recorded so they could watch it, and
You know,
maybe the
yeah.
candidates would be watching.
Yeah.
If they're smart, they'll be watching what's going on at the council right now, right? Probably, so.
It's a really good point. No, it's a really good point.
Ask him
I
anyway.
will. I think I'm inclined to keep it just because it was actually a little difficult to get on the agenda.
Yes.
So I'm afraid it might be like April by the time I get back on it.
No, I get it.
Well, and maybe you can get that property conveyed to the HRA now
Yeah.
and not have to worry about a
Well,
new group of people.
well, I'll still have to
Well,
worry
right.
about the
There's
people.
two different things. One is conveying the property and one is educating about TIF
Right.
and tax. base.
For the
And
purpose
so-
of then having them approve TIF.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's the thing is if they're going to be new counselors, I mean, maybe we do it now as a general sort of like, it's gonna be helpful for the existing counselors anyway. Maybe break down some myths or whatever, dispel some myths. And then if we need to, the new counselors, I'm happy to meet with them even one-on-one and help talk through some of those
So do
things.
you want to get the TIF, you want to get the TIF approved by the city council as a way of getting a developer involved in it? Is that part of that process?
I can say with a very straight face, the only way something of that scale gets built is with TIF.
It's-
Right, so, yes, I understand that.
Mhm.
The city council has to approve that TIF.
Correct. Yep.
So
Yep.
the current group is pretty happy to give the land away, so maybe if they, does that approval of TIF, when does that happen? Does that go with the land transfer?
Oh,
Does that go
sure.
with the developers
It's
have to?
two
When does it
different
happen?
things.
Yep. It's two different
Yeah.
things.
Yes, when does it happen?
So, yeah, so what happens is we would do the land transfer and then there would be a specific project proposed
Okay.
that would have a specific TIF component that the
Okay.
council would then review.
So that's next, is the project is proposed.
Yeah,
the TIF
part of a
proposed.
larger development agreement that
Got it.
stipulates what the public good is getting out of it and all of those
So that
details.
doesn't matter, I mean, in terms of like to Mary's point with a new board, it's not gonna matter. Cause that's not gonna happen before people take their seats in January anyway, right?
Right, the TIF conversation's not gonna happen. Well, yeah, probably until February, March, I
Okay.
would suspect.
Okay, yeah.
So there'll be
That's
some
what
time for sure in between there. But like
Okay.
Commissioner Sullivan said, I'm happy to, if they want me to do it again, if they want one-on-one meetings, I'm more than happy to do that. So, yeah, I'm planning on doing that. Great.
Sorry, I threw a little.
No,
cold
that's
water on your
no, it's a really good point.
plan.
There's so many elections happening. I'm trying to keep my
Yep.
head
Yeah,
straight.
no, that's good.
I just, yeah, as the most effective and efficient use of your time.
Mhm.
If you do something in October and you have to repeat it in January, is that the right? So you
What-
can be the judge.
No, I appreciate
I'm
it.
just reminded.
My experiences with the topic of TIF, people can't hear it
Yeah,
enough
you
to
have to
understand.
do it
what's-
again.
Yeah,
Yeah,
honestly.
very complicated.
Yeah.
It's very complicated.
Yep.
Yes.
The one roof collaboration, we've already gone over that. The only other thing that I'll add is so I think maybe, Mary, you did. One roof has Julie Petrucia's leaving. Was working on the projects up here in Cook County before. She's one of the staff members. She's retiring at the end of the year. Even though I told her she's not allowed to, she doesn't listen to me. And apparently Jeff Corey told her the same thing. It's good for her. So there are two newer folks who are working on the team that are going to be working up in Cook County. And I'm very glad to say that they seem excited to be back and they seem excited to do some work again in the county. And so I'm happy to be working with them, and I'll keep you apprised on both of those sites as we dig into the details more. But I just wanted to kind of, there's probably going to be at least a small placeholder for those as we go forward as things develop on those projects.
What's behind their kind of renewed enthusiasm? Is it because how do they think the economics are going to work better this time?
Well, two things. One, I think that they are going in with their eyes a little wider open.
Lessons learned.
Lessons learned, yeah. Two, I think that they know that they have maybe a boots on the ground partner whose job is only to look at housing, whereas Mary had 1,000 other things in the EDA to worry about.
I have quite the depth of knowledge that you have.
Also, having done this with them before, this is not my first one roof rodeo either. So I think that that's at least helping instill some confidence in being able to move forward. I'm not going to take credit for their renewed enthusiasm, but I think it helps to have a known partner.
Well,
Yes,
wasn't
it
it
is.
also a management issue of, property management, finding honesty to do it rather than one roof trying to do it?
That was part of it.
It was-
Go ahead.
They,
Yeah, please.
when they bought both of those pieces of property, it was always their intent to come back and do another phase.
Mhm.
And in Grand Marais, actually, there were two phases.
Mhm.
The first phase was 6 houses and the second phase was 4,
Mhm.
or 7 and 3, 6 and 4. And so now they're looking at phase 3 because they've invested in the property. And the same in Luton. They never got to the second phase. That was where they lost the most money. I don't
Mhm.
think they lost money in Grand Marais, but they didn't make any money in Grand Marais. And then they lost money in Luton, and I know Jason said he's not gonna take credit, but he is it's a part of, in the mix. And I think just because Jeff Corey has such a passion for making home a better place for people, and
Yeah.
we're
good.
very lucky.
Yeah, it's fortunate.
And they like Cook County. I think genuinely that they
Yeah,
like it
yeah.
and have an appreciation for the area and for the community. And if we can make the math work, and again, like I said, we've been through the ringer a few times on some projects, and I've been on the opposite side of the table arguing with them many a time. But they know that we'll do it in good faith, and I'm sure it's going to happen with some of these. Then that's fine. That's part of the process.
That gets back to Cook County as a place to live and work and everything. And we were at a meeting, Ann was there also last week with some Zoom meeting with some folks around here. Chris Lindholm, the school board, he just basically said how happy he is to be working here in Cook County. You know, all sorts of issues, of course, coming up with the schools, but that the whole community was involved in it. And that's been our experience since moving here as well, and just in terms of the experiences we've had. But I thought he was really articulate about that Cook County is special. He could be working other places, I'm sure, could be making more money, I'm sure, but he just was, I was kind of blown away by what he said about Cook County and the reason he's here and what he's doing here. I mean, I knew what he was doing here because he's an exceptional leader. But, yeah, it was. So hopefully One Roof sees some of that, and even though they're nonprofit, they're not meant to be minus profit.
They still have to, yeah, right.
They need to be making money, really, and I'm sure they figured that out. That's why they don't want to duplicate, you know, a loss again. But
We won't go forward if that looks like it's going to be the case.
yeah,
Right.
that's good.
Yeah, and that's why part of the reason I'm doing some of this homework with, you know, area employers, like let's capture what the real demand is on the ground. I want this to be successful for everyone. So, and if it turned out that what we were planning on isn't what would need to be built, we would pivot and do something different. But
Another thing to keep in mind is the Birch Grove School and the Forest Service office in Tofty. They also are always looking for homes for their professional staff, which might be able to pay a little more rent than.
So
the
the
others.
Lutzen wouldn't be the spot for them per se, right?
No, yeah, in the apartments. That's what I'm talking about.
Oh,
Forest Service personnel and the professional staff at Birch Grove School. I know we're talking to Tofty about development in Tofty, but that isn't gonna happen
Longer
as
term.
soon.
Yeah.
So in the short term, I think talking to the Forest Service and Birch Grove School about the kinds of rents that their employees could pay.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Sorry, I wasn't tracking. Yeah, that is a good idea. And I'm happy to reach out to them and ask them. I kind of see, Yeah.
See if you can get an idea of the demand, because I think the teachers at Birch Grove live in Silver Bay.
Do
and
they
they'd
really?
rather live in Lutzen.
Yeah.
Yes,
because they can afford to
Some
live
of
in
them.
Silver Bay, right?
some
Yeah.
of them, because there was nowhere for them to live.
Right.
And the same with the Forest Service. They have the same problem that the county and also the DNR at the state parks.
Yeah.
So I would suggest that we try to get some data from those entities, because it's a little different pay scale. It's a little higher pay scale. And it might help, maybe some of the apartments have granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. That's what we did with the houses in Grand Marais.
Yeah.
Upgrade to the interior finishes enabled the price to be higher for the people who could.
Who can
Right?
afford that?
So, maybe we can, it's just coming.
No, it's not at all a bad idea. Yeah, again, this is all coming back to market and then demand and what we can
And
bear.
right, and so that's part of the demand is the federal government, the state government and the schools.
They're paying folks and what those
Could
folks
pay
can
more.
afford to live in.
Yeah,
I'm hopeful that if we get this multifamily project, I'm gonna for a second. If we can get that off the ground up the road here, then that will be a really compelling site for some of these folks, or some working professionals who want somewhere to land. I'm putting this over here because the next thing on the agenda is the website, and I tried to plug into the county system and it won't let me. I'm not a county employee, as I've been reminded. So I'm sorry that this is what we're stuck with, but if you can see it, terrific. Can you kind of see it? I'll do a little pivoting here. So,
I was gonna move that.
You're
You're kind of looking like Vanna White.
yeah. Would you like to buy a vowel? How about A for authority? So, yeah, constance, yeah, this is not a word. We've been talking about that website, right? So I told the board that I was going to take a little swing at it to just conceptually get something on paper or digitally. And then if folks are okay with this conceptually, I'll continue to develop it, and then we'll launch it. Scroll on. So just the basic mission, values, and vision and values that is a reflects from our last meeting at the and then you click learn more, and then it brings us to the what we do.
Very nice.
Build
huge apartment.
We built 200 unit buildings.
Well,
We changed zoning.
Yeah, right.
Zoning, and we built skyscrapers.
I don't quite get into that level, and I don't say skyscrapers. I don't want to get kicked out of town. Yeah, that's a good. There's a lot of concepts. I would say that after you get reelected, I wouldn't actually, whatever, do whatever you want, in.
You might be able to.
It's been a slow
Yeah, you
news
might be able
week,
to.
but-
You can print the plans from 2 Harbors.
Oh, yeah, they probably sell them to you cheap. These are stock photos. So I will replace them with Roland's. So why we're here. And I'm happy to send the content to folks, but it just unpacks
Yeah.
how we were founded,
So from this distance, it looks great.
who we are. Lawrence, I couldn't find a picture of you, so I got a picture of the back of your head. This is placeholder photos. I'll replace them, I promise.
That's cute.
But this just gives you the idea of what we're thinking about. And then also a landing page. I put the most recent news articles and hyperlinks, so you can click on those, and then they go to the when the HRA's been
Looks really good, Jason.
good. And then
Will there be a place for like agendas? and
yep, right here.
packets?
So
Okay.
board meetings, I have this linking to the county website that has all of it hosted.
Mhm.
So it just goes right to the HRA's page, the boards of commissioners. And then down here, we'll have, I'll have all the meetings. If we have like summits or working meetings, whatever, we'll have an active calendar here. Otherwise,
So with just a question.
Yeah.
As you're continuing to work on this, back to the meetings and
mhm,
packets and all that, is it better for us to eventually separate ourselves from the county system, or should we continue to operate in this way?
I think eventually it would be good to separate. Right now, you're new, and so I would wait on that. But, that's like the EDA finally has their own thing, and that's very,
Well, the EDA has always had its own thing, but
Yeah.
it doesn't live stream the meetings or record them or any of, that's what I'm talking about.
right.
The EDA has had its own website since before I
Right.
came. But and we don't have to work this out right now. It's what I'm talking
Mhm.
about. Like, do we stay in this room? Do we keep using this recording, streaming for now?
I think for now,
Yeah, okay.
that was for now, this is the solution for now until we decide that longer term.
Yep.
I'm inclined to do it for the short term, like Commissioner Sullivan's saying, in part because we don't have the infrastructure to do it ourselves yet. We don't have a site. We don't have the technology. It's
There's other options, but.
Sure, yeah.
For now.
For
okay.
now, but it's really helpful to have the county be able to
I
upload this.
just wanted to
record
make
those.
sure that we were.
and I just think, from the standpoint of when you get to the point where you're ready to start putting a shovel in the ground, you maybe have a big public meeting, having that videotaped or
Mhm.
live streamed and working with the county to really get that information out there will be
Yeah.
really important.
And I'm assuming at some point there'll be a place for photographs of projects and process and so on and so forth.
Yes, so there is a HRA efforts tab
Uh-huh.
that will have projects and initiatives
Yep.
where we can click and put in pictures and explain.
Is there a place for different organizations and individuals that we're partnering with?
There is, well, that will be under efforts, like, or HRA efforts. So if we're having, let's say, we're working with one roof, it'll say that, we're working with one roof on this project located at blah, 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 blah.
Okay,
But there's a resource tab as well where I'm going to be listing of like all of the local partners and regional partners and funding sources, et cetera. Okay.
Is there a donate button?
No,
oh, good.
no, no, because that gets a little
Okay,
weird.
all right.
We can't be soliciting for donations as a authority. Whereas if someone like Mr. Sanders walks in and
Wants
says,
to
hey, I
give,
want to give
okay.
this,
Yeah.
fantastic, we can take it.
What's the 1% thing that we just put out? Isn't that
We're
soliciting?
not.
We're not soliciting. We're acting as, so I was very clear on the
Yeah.
WCIP with this too. We're acting as a recipient at the request of these private organizations. And
We
they're
can
trusting us.
receive
Yep,
donations, but we can't
Ask for it.
correct.
Someone else has to tell us.
I
I
thought,
wanna
I'm
give you-
gonna have to read it, because I was left with the impression of, when I read it on the 1%, that we were actually soliciting.
No, it's a fine line and I'm trying to make sure we tread it
So
cautiously.
suggesting that people give us 1%?
No,
No.
nope.
It's voluntary, 1%.
Yeah.
Are running this out.
What's,
They're doing it. The
Right.
business leaders are gonna be the ones going to the other business leaders and saying, come join us. Give money to the HRA.
Okay.
We're not asking for it. We can't. Don't ask anyone. Don't ever ask anyone for money for the HRA.
I'm not big on asking for solicitations personally anyway.
Right.
But I
Just
just
saying.
confused about that. No, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
We can't.
Yeah.
None of us can.
It's,
Okay.
as long as we're on that subject, what discussions about rebranding the 1% effort?
the,
Have they talked about?
I'm
that?
trying to, I'm trying to be deferential because this is their initiative that we're partnering with them on.
Yeah,
They have recommended the slogan or new branding they came up with is stepping up for housing in Cook County. Benign enough to me, that's fine. So we're working on adjusting the logo to include a stoop for stepping up and
Yeah.
making those sort of tweaks. So that's, I think, going forward, that's what we're going to do. Cascade Vacation Rentals is already collecting the money to the 1% of their revenues. And then the other, I'm not sure when, I think Odyssey Resorts is going to start at the beginning of the year.
Wow. That's great.
the
So I'm-
concern there, as I got into it, thinking about it was, there's an election in a couple of weeks. And 1%, if that were perceived to be a new tax, I can just imagine the last minute dirt being flung around and everything else. I mean, that's what politics is about sometimes, and especially in this day and age. And I thought, oh gosh, here's a
Muckrakers.
here's a wonderful effort on the part of our businesses to support a public enterprise, and yet the 1% thing, if it came out, well, that really means a tax. I could just see, and I could name names as to where that might fall.
After seeing the ad in the newspaper last week.
Yes.
You mean for my district?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
That is the worst I've seen in a very long time in Cook County.
I just about popped a cork.
Oh, yeah, that was
Yeah.
really.
Not in celebration, I assume.
Oh.
I was gonna say, is that when you win, you pop the cork? Is that what you do? I'll have to look that up.
That is-
So, I mean, typically, we have really respectful, usually. I'm not saying it can't
Yeah.
happen,
Right.
but, and I
But
agree with you
typically-
100% that we, like, the 1% should just not be in our
Mhm.
language
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
It's not in ours.
Right.
And it sounds like they've agreed to rebrand it as well.
Yep,
so.
they're happy with rebranding it. They agree. They don't want to cause confusion. So 1% is no longer a thing. Stepping up for housing, I think stepping up. We
like
will, I'll send that out when the rebranding is done, but otherwise,
Send it out to the board.
Yep,
Okay.
to see it. And then I'm waiting on our private partners to instigate those conversations.
Right.
To be clear, I suspect that I will be at least attending some of those conversations
Mhm.
because they're going to want to know from the HRA's mouth what we're planning to do with those funds.
Mhm.
But I'll make clear in all those meetings. My role here is to explain the use, not to request the source. So,
Mhm.
Perfect.
So those revenues will be a line item that will be established by the business community as to what that money's to be used for. It'll be a line item in our budget.
No, so, another way of putting it is, it's like Cascade, for example, I think they call it a housing fee. But on their, well, if you were to rent a unit of theirs that they manage, there's a fee, and theirs happens to be about 1%, that they add to their bill.
Yes.
For us, we have, the auditor has created a separate account for, I have to rename that one too, because it's 1% for housing. But there's an account that created specifically for those funds because presumably Cascade or Odyssey, the method of providing the money is they're going to mail a check to us. I'm going to bring it to the auditor and say, please put this in this account. So that we will continue to obviously monitor ins and outs and be able to report that.
Okay.
But we're not counting on any of that revenue because they could decide not to at any point, or they could give us 0.5% or nothing 1 month or 2%. So there's no mechanism of auditing or reporting. This is completely voluntary and good faith.
So that account is earmarked specifically, I was using the term line item, that account is marked specifically, and the business community is going to earmark that, it's going to define what that is for?
Nope, that's part of the deal. I made it very clear with Cascade and Odyssey that all, like, the folks, as we talk with folks and as they try to, get people on board for this initiative, that they're signing on to trusting the HRA in our discretion for how these funds will be implemented, with the understanding and open book transparency that all of it will be put into projects. So there's no administrative costs. We're not going to go have a nice HRA dinner.
Right.
This is going to be very specifically into projects. So that's the only qualification, is that if they sign off on us putting this money into the ground to do something, then they're trusting us to use our discretion where and when.
So then can that process for that project, if that money is used for that project, then can the business community use that as I hate to use the word marketing, but as a way to encourage other businesses to get involved, because this is successful, this is what
Sure.
this is happening with it?
Go to town.
They can do that.
Yep, we're talking about creating a little window sticker for those folks who participate, so they can put it on their shops and in their establishments
Okay,
and
nice,
say, hey, this is a movement we're part of.
nice,
Yeah, we
But-
want them to continue to celebrate and try to encourage that.
nice.
But again, it's a weird sort of space where we're getting the money, we're not asking for it.
Yeah,
Um,
so the business community is really running
Yep.
that.
Yep.
Heading that up.
They're
Nice.
promoting it.
Yep.
Mhm.
And it also needs to be clear that if CVR, Cascade Vacation Rentals, makes a deposit into this fund, into the special account for this purpose, it doesn't mean we're gonna work on a project for
Right.
CVR
It's not-
employee housing.
No earmarks.
It's for,
Correct.
it can be where we decide it
Mhm.
needs to go,
Mhm.
not necessarily even in Luton,
Right, got it.
right?
Yeah.
It's not tied, the donation of the fund isn't tied to a project.
Okay.
It
Although,
can,
as the West End representative, Luton's okay.
Luton's just fine,
Uh,
whenever it comes around, Bill.
I'm just speaking up for my district, that's all.
yes, I love the West End. That's where I pay my property taxes.
And I love all districts equally, so we'll see what the need is.
That,
So any questions about the website? Does that look okay for
Looks
folks?
good.
Good.
Okay,
Nice work.
thank you. I'll keep
And this is
plugging
saving
away.
us 15 to 30,000 bucks. at
Yeah,
least,
yeah.
To start with.
it is.
It is. I will say that I have the very good fortune of a wife who has a really good eye for these things. And I say, hey, sweetie, what do you think? She's like, give me that. So I can do the content and she can help put me right when I need to. Yeah. Okay. Thank you all. So I'm glad I asked. This is a free trial and I'm running out of time down to the wire to make sure it's okay. Then I'm going to, it's an annual subscription for the host Squarespace is the website.
Yep.
Okay.
Then I'm just going to purchase that for the next year and we can use that. Great. Okay. Thank you all. That's all I had.
We have two
Mhm.
Commissioner items. Well, that's Mary's here.
Yeah, let's go to that. Commissioner Doe, you want to talk about Hamilton Habitat first?
Yes. I went on their website and looked at what they've got going on there, and then I talked with Anna, and they've done 4 houses in the last 4 years. And their current circumstances, they're a 501c3. And they have their current circumstances don't require any more financial input for their next projects. However, they don't have land to build on. They could be doing 2 to 3 projects concurrently if they had access to properties. And we've talked over and over again about supporting local developers. And it seemed to me like this is something that we should get behind to keep that operation going. And if they can do 2 to 3 every year, every other year, that seems like that's, it's small when we're talking 20, 30, 40 units. That's a small amount, but they've done, this other organization did, one group did 6 and 4 houses in their phases. And Hamilton Habitat's done 4 houses in the last 4 years. It's just a time factor as to what they're building are more affordable housing. So anyway, I think that we should really let's see what else I got. I think that we should figure out some way to access land for Hamilton Habitat so that they can continue.
Commissioner Sullivan.
So the county is working on developing a policy related to tax forfeited properties and other county-owned properties, and we are kind of revving up. And so if you will be patient, I think the land will come.
That's great.
Great.
Is there some advice? I understand that they had some issues with the first generation of houses where houses flipped and the one.
That was one property, and it
One,
was
okay.
just that the legal language was not what they had
Yeah.
thought it was, and that has been taken care of.
Great, okay.
This is one of Hamilton Habitat's properties.
Correct.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, the very first
Yeah.
one.
Got it.
Yeah, I know that's been
Yeah.
fixed. Because I've actually talked about about the language that was used in the legal aspect
Yeah.
and how that's.
That's good news.
Yeah,
No, I think it,
One comment, Commissioner Doe. In my mind, one of the reasons that the school property is so compelling or of interest to me is because it provides opportunities to do something like this.
Yes.
So I've talked with One Roof about, in my dreaming schemes, it's going to be a mixed income development where there are Hamilton housing, houses, there are land trust houses, there are market rate houses. There's a mix because that's the healthiest way to do housing development if you can. So one of the roles the HRA can uniquely play is, of course, securing that property for this public good, and then also getting resources to do the infrastructure so that when Anna wants to build a house, she can have the land, a driveway is in and the land is ready to go and utilities are ready to the property, so that they don't have to contend with all those extraneous costs. They can focus on building and selling affordably. So I'm hopeful that if we can work with the school district on this, we can sort of plug in different players and really help, like to your point, bring up those local developers as well as bring in outside talent.
Yeah. It seemed like, one of the things about working with all the local developers is that they're here and they're doing it. And that what I keep hearing with folks coming in from Duluth or other places is that getting workers here is one thing, working in a county that they're not familiar with is something else again. There's a lot of bumps in the road for outside developers coming in that don't have the experience. Obviously One Roof has, and some of the others have, but they still have the issue of staffing, and with the local developers, the crews are living there. So that's something that I think is an advantage, even if the scale is different. I think it's really important that we operate on a number of different levels of scale. As long as we're making progress, it seems to me like the scale is less important, the progress is more important.
Yeah, and to your earlier comment, it might only, quote, air quotes, be 3 to 4 houses that she could be able to do a year maximally, but that's 3 or 4 families that have a house that didn't. So every house is a dent in, in the problem.
Right.
So,
Right. So you're thinking of the school property, is that the one on the across on the north side of the gun plant?
yeah, it's immediately west of the EDA's business park.
Uh-huh.
There's a good tract of land there. That's what I was referring to
And
earlier.
east of where Hamilton Habitat has the
The one that
place
we're
that's
now?
closing this week.
Uh-huh. Okay, so east of that, right up in that same general area.
East of Creechville, west of the park, business park.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, that's in my vision, is hopefully to be able to set that table. And again, one of the things we can do is we don't have to make money. So if we can get the resources, whether it's IRRR or whatever the source is, to put in the road and the city utilities and bring the lot costs down a lot. So a good example is Mr. Skildum, who's absent today, but his project, like, it's $60,000 a lot in costs. So he has to charge at least that not to lose money,
Right.
and more of that to make it worthwhile. So that's all out the gate, very difficult to build affordably. If we can bring that down to 10 or 0, depending on the funding source, then suddenly the house is, $60,000 cheaper, which I'm very interested in exploring. So thank you for bringing that to our attention.
You know, a friend of mine in the cities did a housing development in the Native community by finding donors that donated. At that time, it was $50,000 that went with the property. So the house was $50,000 less than market value to sell. And then the homeowner was able to sell that house at any time that they wanted to, but that $50,000 stayed with the property. And then it brought down the price for the new buyer to come in at $50,000. It was a very interesting project.
It's like a land trust concept is what it sounds like.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And this was probably 2 decades ago.
Great.
So 50 grand was quite substantial in terms of, that was one method that they were making housing affordable. But they had to find donors. You know, for each of those $50,000, somebody had to pony that up.
Yep.
So, yeah. Yep. Okay, yeah, anything else then with, I appreciate people's responses. Thank you. Then the other one, I was approached a month ago. I was going to bring this up last month, but I couldn't make it. By a county employee who works as an advocate for victims of domestic violence, and she brought it to my attention that there's a pretty high percentage of that in Cook County. And I got some numbers today that I was a little unclear about. I can speak of now, but it's a pretty, of the calls that came in, it was 75% of the calls that came into the Violence Prevention Center was domestic violence. The other 25% was sexual assault. Anyway, the first person that spoke to me, probably 6 weeks ago now, said that the problem that they have is that there's that locally they are able to provide temporary housing in those circumstances, so 2 to 3 nights. After that, it's either go back to that situation or go down to Duluth if they can find a spot in Duluth. There's no place even closer than that. So this person was asking if there was some way that the HRA could be involved in providing a few long-term living situations for victims with children and maybe even a pet, so that could take care of some of the issues, the needs here. And it was what caught my attention is that all the housing needs that we had in the research that was done which was really impressive. That particular need was not identified, and I didn't think about it until this person asked me about it. I know how could the HRA provide this, maybe potentially do that. I did find out that there's an organization in Lake County that has I think they have 3 units, long-term rental units, and that they are subsidized by there's some sort of an organization that subsidizes it. But Cook County has advocates, has sort of a system in place for sort of the management aspect of it, but not the housing aspect of it. So the thought crossed my mind, if we were going to be doing sort of the module thing that we talked about, where there's multiple things, that there was a couple of those that could be identified with maybe a different funding stream for those particular units, if there was some way to do that. So that was brought to my attention, and I think it's something that we should think about if we could, how we could facilitate that.
They initiated the conversation. It seems that the starting point seems to me it would be for them to initiate a conversation with their financial supporters to basically put together a plan for what this might look like, and
Okay.
you know, and if you know, in the HRA, rather than I don't see the HRA being funding that directly, but could facilitate it by, you know, in the ways that we're working with other developers to.
Well, I would think there are foundations that would have some interest in that. I mean, I know there are actually, you know, get the issue, and probably the county itself might have, you know, some interest as well, because obviously this is a county in play already. Right. So they're focused on what the issue is, and they know what the needs are. Yeah. And they know, sadly, the demand is, you know.
I did meet with a violence prevention center a couple of times and talking about this. To Commissioner Gabler's point, to you, Chris, that one of the challenges here is like I explained to them, let's hypothetically say that the HRA was able to build a unit. One, we'd have to look at the legality of keeping that, not secret's not the right word, but you don't want to announce that you're building a home, a shelter home for, right? That's the whole point, is
Yeah,
anonymity,
yeah,
right? So it'd be more like acting as a partner to allow them to construct the thing and helping bring resources if we had any to the table. And then I'm glad to hear that they have the funding on the back end to manage it, because then like you build it, and unless you get a grant to build it where there's no debt service, there's got to be a funding source to pay the debt service.
Right.
I think I know there are, like to your point, Commissioner, foundations or folks who'd be interested in helping to maybe fund to construct it. But I'm ignorant as to the mechanics of how, in my experience in Duluth, the entities that do the operations do the spearhead the project, and then other organizations come alongside with funding or with facilitating land or whatever the thing is.
Mhm.
I don't think we would want to be in the position of like building the project for a variety of reasons, but maybe we could play a partnership role for sure.
Well, I think you both are saying the same thing, and that's, I mean, we're not owning and building projects right now anyway, we're facilitating others to do that.
And there are nonprofit organizations that do that. I mean, I was tangentially involved in Minneapolis when, out of the blue, one of our staff people at that HRA in so this would have been 77 or 8, formed a nonprofit outside of her own job, and the end result was the Harriet Tubman House, which is, a spectacular facility now. I mean, people know where it is and they know where their spouse is going, but it's so secure that, their track record is outstanding. So we really should be also trying to find the nonprofits that would be interested in spearheading that. And, that we'd come in with, any contacts we could, or contacts with foundations.
Yeah.
Or,
And maybe we don't seek the nonprofits, maybe the Violence Prevention Center does that.
that would be.
And we support. That's not
We
really.
got limited bandwidth here, as Jason keeps.
So it sounds to me like what we need to do is put this back in their
Mhm.
ballpark, with some suggestions and guidance, and
I
say,
think
we
so.
get these ducks in a row, then get back to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great. I had indicated, not that directly, but that's kind of where our conversation ended too,
Good,
is
okay.
let us know what part you think we could help play.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's their world.
But we don't lead that.
Can I ask who you spoke with in that?
I spoke with 2 young ladies.
Lindsay Gal.
Yes, I met Lindsay, and there was one other gal, and I can see her face in her Zoom call in her basement, but I cannot remember her name.
Lindsay Gal.
Yeah, GAU.
And
There's
she's
another
the
person.
executive director of the body. She's
Yeah.
the head of it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I don't
So thank
remember
you
the
for-
name of the other.
There are so many good needs and things worthy of our attention, and gosh, there's never enough time or resources.
Yeah,
Right.
well, and these folks are pretty committed to what they're doing, so I'm sure they'll put
That's
some
well said.
elbow grease into
Yeah.
it.
Very,
And if they're not willing to put elbow grease into it, I don't know why we should. So, I mean, that's,
well, it's just not our mission.
it's not a, yeah.
Um. Anything else for the good of the order? I just want to add one thing. I did share with Jason a file that I found in my home. Of the micro house project that Mark Henson did with North House.
Oh, yeah.
And his concept back when he came and met with me when I was at the EDA still was to build a bunch of those on the campus or at the high school and to create a cluster development of them that could be like, maybe they could be on city water and sewer, but they also maybe could be totally off grid. And anyway, I just gave Jason my file and I told him that I'll write an email of introduction and see if Mark still has any interest or energy in pursuing that concept. It's a fabulous idea.
Yeah, I remember the house.
And the thought was,
Not sure
even
where
if
it is
North
now.
House, if they could build one house every year on the campus.
Yep, I remember seeing.
And there was a place for people to put them in, live in them. So maybe we'll become our own little module housing.
Timber frame developer.
Timber frame module, maybe one house at a time, like Anna.
I'm waiting to meet with them about that. So thank you for those. That's gonna help inform the
You're
conversation.
gonna meet with North House?
Yep,
You
yep.
already have that.
I met with
scheduled.
North House and I'm meeting with Randy. I can't remember his last name.
Snowbridge.
Thank you. Yes, that's the one.
Okay,
Waiting.
so I don't need to introduce you. Yeah.
If you want to go ahead, I don't know. There are lots of people.
Maybe
that are-
they don't need him, maybe they got it all rolling.
One other thing. Do you know Jonathan Hedstrom?
Yes.
Okay, I'm meeting him tomorrow or the next day or to talk about. So that's one thing I meant. I'm working to do with some students at the high school. They're going to do an analysis on some housing issues. And so we're meeting with them to give them some material and help them get engaged locally with doing a project.
Great.
So just
Excellent.
other random things.
I'd like to back up a bit about this thing about the domestic violence. And Madam Chair, your comment about it not being our mission, it seems like if a community member comes forward and identifies a housing need in the county, it seems like that is our mission. It may not be our top priority. We certainly have to prioritize all the needs, but this is a new need that was identified to me as a commission member, and I don't see it as outside of our mission at all. I think that if anybody comes forward and says, there's a need for housing, I think that we need to at least pay attention to it. And not-
Absolutely,
and not-
100%.
Okay.
I'm just saying we don't lead that. We don't go, I don't believe it's our job to go look for the nonprofits that will help.
we agree with that. Yeah, we all agree with that. Yeah.
Okay.
But the idea that a community member is asking us about a housing need, I think that we need to pay attention to that.
Yeah, and even though it wasn't in the housing study, I've been aware of it for
Oh, yeah.
about 40 years.
I heard about a week too. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
It is a
right.
need.
It is a need.
Yeah.
It's absolutely 100%.
Well, I'll get back to them and be a little bit more crisp about what they need to do. Then
yeah, I stand ready to engage if
We're
they
here to
have.
help everybody all the time.
Yes. Yep.
Right, Jason.
Sure.
I just think that they're in a better position to pitch to a foundation. saying,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, and we are, and I really mean that. I don't mean to make a joke. We are here to support every housing need in Cook County.
Yeah.
But we can't do it all
Yeah, absolutely.
in today.
And I don't know, I'm so ignorant as to
Yeah,
the
and we need to
mechanisms for
prioritize.
funding
Yeah.
these programs.
Right, those folks who work in that realm know where the best
Mhm.
potential
Mhm.
leads are
Yeah.
to the resources that will help enable them to move forward with the project. And we have some other resources that we can bring, but we can't start the process. We
Yeah,
have to,
and-
they get the ball rolling, then we can.
Right.
Well, and keeping in mind, I mean, I'm familiar with the Harriet Tubman project and have worked with them quite a bit when I was in the Twin Cities, and we're talking secure housing. It's
Mhm.
very different
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
than what we're engaged in right now.
Yeah, it's the opposite end of the spectrum.
And I think that this may be a model. I mean, we're still in the phase of throwing spaghetti at a wall to see, to try all different models. And this would be a different model where there may be other organizations as well that
Yeah.
have, in Cook County that have a specific housing need that are, the nonprofits that are funded from somewhere, from some other sources that have that can broaden and have the wherewithal to put together a proposal for developing housing that's specifically associated with their mission, and we can offer services to support that.
Yeah.
But
You
it's,
nailed
but
it. That's,
yeah.
yeah,
but I think
that's
so. I
the way
think
to
it,
approach it.
But I remember Commissioner Sullivan early on in all of this talking about there are no group homes in Cook
Correct.
County. And, there's different types of group homes, for different populations, but that's, just another area of need.
Mhm.
We won't be able to solve that overnight either, but at least we should be paying attention if there's ideas floating around by groups that, we want to support that.
Just as one final comment about this, something that had come to mind since I talked with them and since you brought it up to me a month ago, there are maybe ways in which we can facilitate relationships. And so, but by that, I mean, for example, if we have this multifamily project, some portion of that, if we help provide funding for it is going to be required to be affordable. And maybe we do a matchmaking where one of those affordable units is reserved for this purpose and we connect the VPC or whatever with
Yeah.
that unit. And then it's anonymous to us. We don't know which unit it is, but we know that there's a 1-bedroom unit that's reserved for this use in a project that we're helping to facilitate. So that's one way and maybe we can help. I just don't know how they fund the rental. I don't know how that works for them. So
It's fun to watch you neurons firing.
is that what that crackling going on? There's smoke coming out somewhere. I know it's my ears are toast.
Madam Chair, I move adjourned.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion is adjourned. The meeting is adjourned. The
Thanks.
motion.
Thank
is
you,
adjourned.
everybody.
Oh.
You didn't drive that down today?
I thought about putting on a warm coat.
One last hurrah, huh?
Take care.
See you.
Yesterday I came to Gretna. When the wind